Why are Bryan Kohberger's hands so extremely red in this illegally leaked footage of him in his new prison cell? And also, what is this big brown bag on the floor? On top of that, what are these weird items on his bed? And finally, a few more things that you and other people on YouTube have either completely overlooked or just not noticed at all. Explained in full from someone who has done 10 years recently in a state prison system himself. I know exactly what I'm looking at with all of these questions, and all of those questions will get answered in this video. Let's get started. So, first off, I'm looking right here at this still shot of the footage. The full playable footage is in my previous video about Bryan Kohberger from a day and a half ago. Go check it out. But right here, you see, I mean, good Lord, look at his hands. They are beet red. They are almost the same shade as those little slippers on the ground there in his cell. Why are his hands so red? And you know, at one point I was looking at him like, it might just be the camera quality. It's just the lighting. But I mean, look at this. This is, I mean, Jesus. He looks like he's welding with his hands and dipped them in fire and lava. And in my opinion, as someone who's did a decade in there are only really two explanations as to why his hands would be this color. Number one, this kind of makes sense and falls in line with the OCD, germaphobe, hypochondriac, very obsessed with cleanliness narrative that goes along with Bryan Kohberger. It's likely, because he's holding a tissue right here in his right hand. He just got done cleaning his shoes. It's very likely, he was on a cleaning spree with his cell, and he has rubbed his hands raw, likely with, you can get scalding hot water out of that sink that doubles as a toilet. You see the toilet bowl, but that top part, you see the little bulk up there and the little white thing, that's probably a hand washing hand rag over there to the right of the top of the toilet, and that's kept there for that purpose. You can get scalding hot water if you you have to press a button to get water to spurt out for about 10 seconds. If you continuously press it for about 3 minutes, it will ultimately heat up and heat up and heat up, and it will get to where like steam comes off. So it's, somebody like Bryan, especially if, it seems like I was just wiping down my shoes and God knows what else in his cell, which I assure you is very nasty. It's very likely he used some chemicals and some soap and just scalded the ding dang crap out of his hands, fingers, palms, and more under that scalding hot water. And so that is why his hands are so red. Very likely. The other explanation, this is a little less likely, but I have to throw it in there because it is a possibility. If you see here, you'll see the color, you see the shoes on the ground. You also see the color of some clothing, some state-issued prison clothing there folded on top of the cage that cages in the TV that he is allowed to have and watch in solitary. This could be the remnants of dye. Okay, and let me explain. You can Google all this if you want, but take my word for it. When I was in SCDC, South Carolina Department of Corrections, For most of the years, we wore tan jumpsuits. In 2018, a prison riot happened that was so deadly, so devastating, and made the news and was so, whoa, this is just extreme and awful. A lot of significant changes happened to the prison after that. One of those in 2018 being that our tan jumpsuits got changed to bright orange jumpsuits. This was to help with visibility of inmates on camera and also visibility during the night of inmates who tried to escape and climb fences, because that was a whole thing and scenario and situation during this big prison riot, which is ranked. It was the number one most deadly prison riot in the last 25 years in America up until 2020, when something happened in Arizona prison and took the number one spot. So then that prison was number two. But anyways, you get how severe it was. So they made a big change. The point is, I was there for that. And when they rolled out that change, yeah, we had to take you get 5 jumpsuits. And we had to turn in all of our tan jumpsuits. And they even made an announcement. If any inmate after this certain date is caught with a piece of tan jumpsuit clothing, you will be charged with contraband. They made sure they got rid of that, and they issued us brand new bright orange, pretty much the shade of shoes and that shirt you see there, orange jumpsuits. Now, the crazy thing about this is people, they gave us the jumpsuits. We'd put them on and we'd lay in the bed. We have white bed sheets. We'd lay in the bed for like an hour or two. We'd get up. There were like orange stains on the bed sheets from the just heavy dye and unprofessional, cheap. You got to know, these aren't coming out of Gucci or Louis Vuitton. These are cheap, crappily made jumpsuits with your most crude, crappy dye. And so, you'd put it on, you'd get orange dye on your arms, on your bed sheets. If you leaned up against a wall, there'd be like an orange stain until you washed them about 5 to 10 times. Bryan Kohberger in this footage is probably new enough to where that clothing has not been washed thoroughly enough and enough times for all of that dye to get washed out to where it doesn't stain whatever it touches for any somewhat, significant amount of time. It's possible that Bryan was washing his orange issued jumpsuits and his orange slippers there that are for the shower and got like some orange staining on his hands from handling them and washing them so much. So those are my 2 conclusions on why his hands look like that. Let's move on to what in the hell is this big old brown bag? Did he DoorDash McDonald's? What's going on here? I'll tell you exactly what that is. Once again, just like the first question, there are really only 2 things that this could be. So let me explain both, and you decide what you think it most likely is. I'll start with number 1, which I think is less likely because of when this video got recorded and leaked, which no one knows really when this corrections officer, who is probably soon to be fired and charged criminally for breaking the rules and the law, took this video, when he leaked it to whoever, and when whoever, got it, and however long they decided to have it before they ultimately put it on the internet. We don't know. It could have been that same day, could have been a week, could have been 2 weeks, who knows? Now, so first off, the least likely option of the 2 is this brown bag is something that every inmate gets when they arrive to a new yard. They're going to give you 2 to 3 envelopes, a little bit of blank writing paper, maybe an ink pen, a very flexible, bendy one that's very hard to use to write so that it's not stiff enough to make a weapon out of, and possibly an unsharpened pencil. They don't give you a pencil sharpener. And so it's almost like, how do you expect me to sharpen this pencil other than learning how to sharpen things that aren't sharp? It's almost like they set you up to learn how to make weapons. Other than that, yes, 2 to 3 pairs of state issued boxers, socks. They will not give you a t-shirt. Bryan probably had to buy that, which is why I think this is a little bit later than the day that he arrived and got his initial welcome orientation starter package, right? I don't see why he would still have that brown bag. This is a very crisp, clean white shirt. You have to order that off the commissary. So, you know, that he's wearing. So I don't think it is this, but some very generic single blade razors if it is a prison that requires you to shave. If they don't require you to shave, then they won't put that in there. I don't know if Idaho operates like that or not. Other than that, some very, very crude, generic state-issued shampoo. I mean, all these bottles of things, hygiene, are going to be the size of like a pack of Tic Tacs. Shampoo, soap. You're going to get some very generic soap that's probably going to give you a rash, and some deodorant that will probably cause your armpit hair to fall off before it ever prevents, odor. That's the first possibility. And he just, he took all his items out of that and kept the bag. I personally don't think that's what it is, but I felt it was worth mentioning that that is a possibility because they do give you a welcome sack of stuff that they're legally required to give you. After that, you're on your own, buddy. Hope you got somebody to put money on your account. What this likely is due to the size, because the size of this bag, I got all of those things when I went to prison it was literally like the brown paper bag was like the size of oh man, I don't even know, like an iPad mini. This looks like a big old, DoorDash size brown bag. So here's what I think came in it and what it is. I think Idaho prisons, it's likely that when it's breakfast time, 5 to 6 a.m., they're going to bring you a tray. They'll put it in through the slot that is in your door. They'll open the slot, unlock it, and slide it in. You grab it. That's it. It's got your biscuit, your grits, your nasty, unconsumable expired eggs, and God knows what else on that tray. Dinner time, 5 to 6, maybe sometimes 4. You'll have whatever, something nasty. But lunchtime, 12 to 1, noon. It is not uncommon for them to just slide you a paper bag, a brown bag like this, and it probably has a piece of fruit, usually an orange or an apple. If you're lucky, a banana. A bag of chips, generic chips. We're not getting any Lay's or Ruffles. We're getting Prisoner McGee's. Home-fashioned, homegrown, homemade potato chips since 1914. Some weird brand you never heard of, because it was the cheapest for the prison to buy. A bag of potato chips, a piece of fruit, and probably, a sack of 2 slices of bread that may be moldy, and some lunch meat that smells like absolute crap, and maybe a slice of American cheese. That's your lunch sack. So it honestly, this looks like a lunch sack. That's his lunch sack. And that's why it's still sitting there. If this was his welcome package, I feel like he would have gotten rid of the brown bag a long time ago. The only reason not to is if you found a use for the materials that are a part of that brown bag as an inmate. If there's any way to utilize some materials that you're given, you'll do it. He hasn't done it. It's just a bag sitting there, and it's probably been a while since he got it. And so This screams to me, it's just a lunch sack, and that's what they put it in. So that's why it's sitting right there by the door. If you notice, that's near the door, and that's what we're about to get into after this. What are these weird items on his bed? You see this oblong, almost rectangular with curved edges shape item here on his bed. That is a remote for the TV that I pointed out in my previous video. He has a TV right here in this caged cube. That's his remote. Above that, you have this square, rectangular little white thing. Who on earth could ever figure out what that is? I could. That is his state-issued prisoner identification card. And every time they do count time, which is basically 3 times a day, corrections officers, probably the biggest part of their job, the most important thing that they do on their shift when working is during these 3 times a day, they go around to every single cell and they take a count. And they need every inmate to stand up and show their ID card and say, hey, I'm inmate Kohberger number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever his number is. They need to see you do it, and they'll be like, all right, he's here. That is how they take count and make sure no one has escaped. And so he has his ID card ready there. It's probably, like I said, this is probably a lunch sack that came about 1 p.m. Usually you'll have a count time at about 8 to 9 a.m., 3 p.m., and then again at like shift change, which is 6 to 7 p.m. If he got his lunch sack about 1, he's eaten it all. You see an empty bag there, and now he's got his ID. It's probably been an hour. He's got his card there laying on his bed. So within the next half hour to an hour, COs are going to come by and do a count time, and he has his card ready so he can hold it up and do what he's required to do for count time. So that's what that is. How are they going to do that? Well, let's move on to something I don't think a lot of people noticed. Now, look right here. If you look in the bottom right corner of this, you see like this blue angled rectangle right here. This is a window, a large window. Then there's a divider in between it, and you see this little box right here that the circle's around. This box is basically an intercom, and it has an emergency button. Bryan Kohberger or any inmate in these cells can press that button at any time, and probably within 5 to 10 seconds, they'll press the button and someone will come over the intercom and be like, yeah, what do you need? What's going on? Bryan can be like, oh, I'm dying. Help me, help. Or they can be like, hey, screw you. Whatever weird thing they want, who knows? They can say whatever they want. But the legal purpose that option is there is so that if there is a medical emergency, you're having a heart attack, a stroke, or just anything, you can hit that button and very promptly an officer will respond and you can say, hey, I need help, send people down here for whatever reason. Now, if you look a little bit past that along the same wall, there is another cutout there. You can barely see it, but that is another cutout and that is another window. So you just see how much, basically, there's 4 walls here in Bryan's cell. An entire 4th of his cell, which is an entire wall, basically, is glass window. Okay. People can look in. He is never alone. He never has any privacy. Even when he goes back there and takes a little Kohberger Dookie burger, Dookie, he never has any privacy. He's just back there and he's hoping nobody walks by and looks in there when he's squeezing one out. Very embarrassing. Otherwise, let's zoom in a little further here in this second window slot. Do you see that little blue thing? You might not know what that is, but there's a reason why I saw that and an image popped in my head and a feeling popped in my gut within 2 seconds. I didn't sit here for 30 minutes to an hour and be like, what could I possibly say that this is. No, something immediately popped in my head. I know what that is. That is that is deodorant. That is a speed stick. That is a deodorant stick. And he has it just sitting there in his windowsill. And it just further adds on to like how unorganized he is as someone who the media said is like so OCD. And I know OCD doesn't always mean you're extremely organized. It can mean a lot of different things. I fully understand that. But I'm just saying the way they portrayed it to us is that Bryan is OCD, and so therefore he's going to have a hard time in prison because everything is going to be dirty and things are going to be out of place, and it's just going to make him lose his mind. Bryan has full control over this cell and all his possessions within it, and he doesn't seem, I mean, look at everything, the shoes, the other shoes, this stuff in the corner, a roll of toilet paper, the stuff on top of the cage, the bag, the deodorant. And if you don't believe that's deodorant, whatever item that is, clearly it's an item of his. Why is all this? None of this looks specifically placed or well organized, you know? And that's kind of how the media made us feel like he was going to operate in prison, and it's not. And so that's very intriguing to me. But other than that, that's what I have for you. If there are any other questions that I missed about anything going on in this cell or this footage, please let me know, and I'll be happy to make a new video answering those questions. Until then, I'll see you next time.
Hi, I'm Dr. Christina Green, and I'm the dentist who helped Jumpsuit Pablo get his smile back. But it wasn't just about his smile. It was about getting his health, his confidence, and being able to fully live again. If you've been hiding your smile, or you think that full mouth reconstruction is out of reach, I want you to know that your medical insurance may have benefits to cover this surgery. Every day, we help people just like you. To see if you qualify, just scan the QR code or email me directly. I'm Dr. Green, and I'd love to see if I can help you.